Hello, hello, hello to all. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about a Texas ruling on trans students, or rather trans youth parent trans students, and well, in general, trans kids, because it looks like there's going to be some hefty rulings going on here, and might be for the good thing. Let's dive in. Mixed Texas ruling allows trans youth parent investigations. The Texas Supreme Court on Friday allowed the state to investigate parents of transgender youth for child abuse, while also ruling in favor of one family that was among the first contacted by child welfare officials following an order by Republican Governor Greg Abbott. The court did not rule on the merits of the investigations, which were the first of its kind in the U.S., only that lower courts in Texas overstepped by trying to block all cases from going forward. Of course, because you guys want to protect, the little kid abusers that you seem to take a really liking to for some reason. The mixed ruling by Texas' highest civil court, which is made up of 9 elected Republican progressives, comes at a moment when GOP lawmakers across the U.S. are accelerating efforts to impose restrictions on transgender rights. Both parties in the lawsuit call the decision a victory. Lambda Legal, which helped bring the lawsuit against Texas on behalf of the parents of the 16-year-old girl, called the decision a win because it put the state's investigation into their family on hold. Although the ruling does not prevent Texas from launching investigations into other families, the state would be foolish to do so now because those families could also seek an injunction, said Ozma Bronze's counsel and health or care strategist for Lambda Legal. It would be both futile and a complete waste of resources for them to do so, Gonzalez said. Texas went farther than any state in February when Abbott issued a first-of-its-kind order that instructed child welfare officials to investigate reports of gender-confirming care for kids as abuse. Yeah, because they're kids. Listen, they're trying to make kids transition when they're extremely young, and it does have very negative effects to them either currently or later in life, especially the hormone therapies, which actively makes them sterile, by the way. So even if they wanted to transition back to their actual biological sex, they would not be able to have kids because the stuff or the hormones make them sterilized. I say they should at least be done at 18 years old, to where you're allowed to. But if my deepest inside of the opinion, I would allow it to be 25. That way, your full frontal cortex is fully developed, and you're able to make decisions more rationally and more understandably, and kind of understand who you are, because you change so much between the ages of 21 to even 25, and then I even noticed understand things when I was 25, and just shifting every 2 years to where I am now, to where my thinking has changed, my way of things that was really fully developed. Like, a lot of things in me changed, and people change constantly, right, throughout the years. But it's not such a massive jump of change to where it changes to your core, right? Your core usually just stays the same, and some other parts here or there are thoughts or whatever change throughout the years. And 25 is when your brain is fully developed and you have a full frontal cortex to actually be able to make very big decisions. However, if you're 18 and of legal age, I guess you could say you could allow this to happen at that age, right? So I can probably get away with that. I could probably be fine with that. But again, my personal opinion, deep opinion, would be 25 at the very least, because that's when your full frontal cortex is actually fully developed and you can make rational decisions. The lawsuit marked the first report of parents being investigated following Abbott's directive and an earlier non-binding legal opinion by Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton labeling certain gender-confirming treatments as child abuse. Yes, like I said, like the hormonal the ones where it changes and it makes you become sterile. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services has said it opened 9 investigations following the directive and opinion. Brian Klosterbauer, a staff attorney with the ACLU leading the case, said the court's decision was largely good news, citing the relief for his clients as well as finding that Paxton's opinion and Abbott's directive are non-binding and do not have legal effect. Klosterbauer said the court's decision clarifies that the governor does not have the authority to change Texas law, and though the state's family services agency can decide whether to investigate, it is up to the courts whether the agency can take action against any family reported under this directive. His directive is, I think, that what caused the most harm because it created a lot of fear and panic across the state, Klosterbauer said. According to Klosterbauer, Baxter's office filed an appeal within minutes of the decision. In a social media post following the ruling, Baxter said he had just secured a win. Abbott's office did not immediately respond to the 2 requests for comment. Across the country, Republicans have leaned into the debates over transgender rights as LGBTQ Americans have grown increasingly visible in society and pop culture. In March, the Arizona legislature passed bills to prohibit gender confirmation surgery for minors and ban transgender athletes from playing on girls' sports teams, and Republican Governor Doug Ducey signed them. Yes, because that is correct. Because when we are born, we are biologically this sex. That's the way it is. There is no different. We are biologically this sex, and having them compete against biological women is just asinine. Like, come on now. There was a rugby thing where a rugby tournament, or I would say practice, where a biological male, aka transgender man, came in, injured 3 women, and then the coach had to go out and speak very loudly about this because the 3 women were injured. There's no competition. So again, we're doing this. But as I would say, that whole issue, that the whole men entering, the women's sports, that's women's fault. I'm sorry. We tried to warn you about this, and then you guys just allowed it to happen, and now this is the issue to wear your sports. So like I said, you women, you fight for that. That's your problem. I don't understand why you would allow this to happen, but due to your want to be an accepting nature, or to think it's okay, or politically correct, or because for some reason you have to follow society standards, you allowed it to happen, and now your supports are at threat. Well, good on to you, ladies, because now it's your time to fight back. We're not going to stop you from fighting back, but it's your job to do it. Keep men out of it, like you've been keeping men out of most things for the past couple of decades now. In Texas, the groups bringing the lawsuit are also present a clinical psychologist who has said the governor's directive forces her to choose between reporting clients to the state or losing her license and other penalties. Yeah, you probably should if kids are being abused. The governor's directive and Paxton's opinion go against the nation's largest medical groups, including American Medical Association, who have opposed Republican-backed restrictions on transgender people filed in State House nationwide. Okay, so I will try to break this down as much as I can. I'm not really a legal expert, and I'm not going to claim to be. However, what I will say is this, is that there is no actual rights to kids because a lot of rights for Pacific kids are restricted and removed and being directly to the parents, right? Okay, so in this case specifically, we're going to have an issue to where what would be a child abuse and what would not be child abuse, and I would say forcing kids to do something that cannot be changed, that can actually sterilize them, is a huge issue. And again, they're making this sound to like where kids, to where it's going to affect, where they're affecting adults or actual transgenders in general. No, they're not. What they're doing is that they're making it illegal and detrimental to save kids. AKA, let's put this in big bold letters. Kids, okay? So, due to that they're making it an issue to where kids can't just transition, alright? Because when you do it at 12 or 13 and you do the hormone thing, it can have very negative detriments to people, to kids in general. And they're like, and a lot of people, or a lot of times people will be like, okay, well, you can just stop it. Okay, first off, we know that there are effects that can lead them to be sterile, which I said multiple times throughout this video. And then there's also cases to where if, like, where men will develop breast tissue, okay, so they have to have that surgically removed. You can't just have that doesn't just stop, okay? That just gets surgically removed. Not only that, they're talking about, like, oh, you can just stop it. Yes, you can just stop it, but then certain bone structures, etc., things start happening that makes it a huge problem. The reason why women and men are so completely different biologically is insane, right? So we have different uses for all this stuff. So when you put too much of, like, estrogen into a male, it affects him negatively rather than positively. Same thing when you put too much testosterone in a woman, it affects her negatively until positively. We all have a little bit of both in the sexes, right? We both have a little bit of each. However, we'll have way more of testosterone, which will be in men, and we have way more estrogen, which will be in women. So, therefore, due to this is what happens with all this stuff. And not only that, it could also, I don't know if it actually affects birth problems with when you transition. I could be wrong. Besides the whole sterile thing, but yeah, regardless of that, I don't know if it actually has issue to actually having children when you do transition because of all this other stuff. But again, this is a huge issue, and kids should not be able to transition at all. And we're seeing kids being transitioned to like 16, 14, 12, or trying to actually make kids transition to anything below that. And God forbid, they'll fight back and say, oh, we're not doing that, but we're actively seeing that in schools and stuff like that. It's not acceptable. It's not okay. Let's stop hurting kids. Alright? Alright, guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.